This is what we call earthquake weather or fire weather, us Southern Californians. Hot, clear, still, quiet, kind of spooky, but also beautiful. It is about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I am finally motivating myself to go once again to the magic place that gives you food in exchange for money. And we might pass some spooky lawns along the way. It's Friday. Now, normally on Fridays, I either play the hypocrite card, where I complain about people who are complaining about the exact same thing that I'm complaining about. But let's face it, the complaint department the past 2 weeks has been pretty pathetic, even for our usual champions. Oh, I'm not going to make any more videos about the OSR. Proceeding to make 24 videos about the OSR. Okay, so since we can't talk about those losers, let's talk about world building. World building. The question that reaches every potential game master's brain at some point in time is where, what, how, who, what is the story I'm going to tell, and where am I going to tell it? Okay, so we've kind of gone through chapter 0 of just the sort of basic information and where you can find stuff and stuff like that. So now let's get to the core. Some schools of world building say start outside and work your way in. You know, start big, all of Middle Earth, and then work your way down to teeny weeny little, the Shire. And other people say start small, the Shire, and then slowly over time build your world from there till it's all of Middle Earth. I am definitely a start small guy. You know, the longest campaign I ever ran started with a 20-page module in a city, and that ended up being almost 9 years long, and they rarely left the city. So I'm definitely more of a fan of start small. There is no right answer, okay? So don't feel like, oh, if I don't do it this way, I'm like a bad person or whatever. No, whatever. You'll find your voice, and you'll find what works for you. You might start one way and then go like, you know what? No, I want to do this. So, yeah. And eventually, though, the kernel, the core of your game, where things start. A place we will affectionately refer to as town. Okay, chances are whatever you're running is going to start in town. The player characters meet in a bar, right? In town. So no matter how big you're going, you kind of need to give some thought to town. What's in town and who lives in town. Now the problem with town is we find over and over and over again, a lot of the main complaints you hear is people murder hoboed by NPCs, or, you know, they got too interested in town and they never left. You know, the grandma's house story, we've told that dozens of times, and we've told the story about young Keg and the cute and fuzzy NPC, and the fact that the player characters get so obsessed with town and shopping that they... Bruce Campbell? Oh, here we go. Nice. But they never leave town. So the happy medium that you're going for with town and the people who live in town is you want it to be interesting enough that they invest in it, but not so interesting that they become obsessed by it. I know that's hard to wrap our heads around. We want the town and the people to be interesting enough that we are invested in them, at least for a few moments. We care about them enough that we don't kill them, but not so interesting that we become obsessed with that about them. We want them to stand out, but we don't want to stand them out so much that they become the center of focus. They're very interesting and then they're forgettable. Very interesting and then forgettable. They're like characters in a murder of the week TV show, right? This guy's really interesting, but am I ever going to see him again once I leave the context of this episode? So that's the problem. That's the happy medium for NPCs, and it goes for buildings too. You want the buildings to be interesting enough that they're like, oh, I care about this building, or even, oh yeah, I remember where the blacksmith is, but not so interesting that they're like, I want to spend my entire game session talking to every single person in that bar and shopping for stuff in town. It's like, I want my town to be interesting, but not that interesting. I know it's hard to put that into perspective, you know. So again, I'm going to use, you know, episodic TV. Think about episodic TV, right? During the episode, the spotlight shines on certain characters who stand out, and the main characters interact with them. And the episode might also spotlight a place, a building, or whatever. And for that half an hour, 45 minutes, that building is really interesting. But then when the episode's over, those people are really, you know, may or may not ever show up again. And that building may or may not show up again. That's what you're going for. Now, when designing your people in town, you definitely do not want them to have a target on their back. You don't want them to be annoying, so I killed him. But you also want them to be interesting enough that both you remember who each individual is, and they remember on some subconscious level who each person is. So if 6 sessions down the road, they need to go get a thing, they remember where they can get thing, and you want them to be able to go to get the thing quick enough, turn around, and then get back to whatever it is you think you need them to do for that episode. I think I wouldn't be this out of shape with all the swimming and walking I'm doing, but it's the weather. So let's talk about people first. Let's talk about those all-important NPCs. Let's talk about those walking targets, the people that make up your town. You want them to be interesting, but not so interesting that they become the focus of the story. When designing NPCs, I tend to think along the terms of name. What is this person's name? What does this person want in this scene? What is this person afraid of? And what is the thing that makes this person stand out? Because everybody's got their tell, right? Everybody's got their one little thing that makes them stand out from the crowd if you spend enough time people watching the crowd. It might be a very subtle tick, or it might be something really flamboyant, but it's something that stands out if the characters actually spend time, but not so much that they become, wow, what's with that guy? I really want to follow him because he's really interesting. Again, episodic TV. For this episode, we know who this person is, we know what they want, we know what they're afraid of, we know the one thing that stands out, but once the episode is over, we kind of forget about them. They're not that important. So I'm going to say that over and over again, probably. So naming is hard. I probably have the weirdest naming practice of anybody in the world. I'm sure I've talked to you guys about it before, but if not, so my naming practice has been basically look to the right. And the first thing I see is the character's first name, and look to the left, and that's the character's second name if they have one. That's, you know, and most of my characters have had names like that, you know. So look to the right. Oh, orange tree. Look to the left. Cavendish. Orange Cavendish. This is Orange Cavendish. And okay, so that's the name. Then what does this NPC want in relation to this scene? Well, most likely the NPC wants something from the player characters and is afraid the player characters might kill them. Because we know that is the #1 threat to the lives of your NPCs. That's your players. Your players for whatever reason, Miss might just decide to go murder hobo on your entire village, and that's not something you want to happen. But we'll talk about what to do if that does happen later on. So now you've got your guy, okay? Who is this guy? Orange Cavendish. What does this guy want? He wants something from the NPCs. What does he want from the NPCs? Well, chances are, if the player characters are interacting with him, it's because he has something they want. Could be a object, or could be information, right? Or could be the next step in a series of steps, okay? So the NPC might want the player characters to go kill a bunch of rats in the basement of the inn. Or the player characters might want to buy arrows, and they go to talk to Orange Cavendish, who is the guy who sells arrows. All right, so there we go. There's the first, most common one. Second common one would be like information, you know. Go meet this guy because he has information on the next part of the thing. Or you need to take this information to Orange Cavendish so he can get the village ready for what's ever going to happen next, okay? Second thing, I want something, or you want something from him. And then the third is like the escort quest, and I think we all hate escort quests, right? Where I have to take Orange Cavendish from point A to point B, keeping them alive because they are important to something that happens at port B. Probably want to avoid escort quests. I think people generally hate escort quests, but it's out there. All right, so now we know what Orange Cavendish wants: money, or the exchange of goods, or the exchange of services. What is Orange Cavendish fear? Besides having the player characters kill them, perhaps he has a secret that he doesn't want anybody to find out about. Perhaps he's got a dependent who would be lost if something bad happened to him. Perhaps he has a debt and he needs that money to pay off the debt. Perhaps he collects spoons and he doesn't want anybody to know he collects spoons. It doesn't have to be grandiose, but everybody has one little secret, one little fear, one little thing. And then, what is his tell? What is his quirk? What is the thing that makes Orange Cavendish stand out? Ooh. There we go. From all the other people in town for that 5 seconds that you're focusing on attention on. And it could be Orange Cavendish has a scarf. Orange Cavendish bites his nails, or whatever, you know, just one little thing that makes that subconscious kernel lock onto him. So 10 episodes from now, when you go back and they're like, which one was Orange Cavendish? They're gonna go, oh yeah, he was the guy in the scarf. Oh yeah, okay, I remember now. So it's that visual cue. So now Orange Cavendish is interesting for the scene, because we're, you know, to go back to episodic TV, because I know Shoner's going to say I'm an idiot. For the scene, he's interesting. He is providing a service to move the story of that scene along. Once the players leave and move on to the next scene, you want them to forget about him, because you don't want them to develop that grandma's house obsession with him. You don't want him to develop that he's so cool, I want to hang out with him, or he's so cool, I want to take him with us, or he's so cool, I want to subvert the adventure to devote more energy to this NPC. That's the secret of world building. That's the secret of town. Town should be interesting enough that the player characters don't want to destroy it, that the player characters have some connection to it if something bad happens to town, but not so interesting that the player characters never want to leave it. And that it's, or so interesting that the player characters decide it's better for them to stay in town and start killing people and taking over the businesses. I don't want to pay for that sword. I'm gonna kill the blacksmith because you made the sword interesting. You know, you know, when I was running my high-level game, my short-lived high-level game, they came across a stables. They ran into an NPC at the stables. The NPC was trying to sell them a mount. That was his job. So he tried to take every conversation back to, I want to sell you this mount, because that's my job, to sell you this mount. But because for whatever reasons, a player thought he was annoying and killed him. And I'm like, why? Why did you kill this poor 0 level guy? Well, because he was annoying. He was trying too hard to sell me the horse. So what was it about that character that made him annoying? What was it about him that he stood out enough that the player became focused enough on him to strike out at him for no reason? That's what you want to avoid. Something I did clicked the switch in that player's brain that made that guy interesting enough and annoying enough that he had to die, which then of course caused a cascade of everybody in the town turning against them and trying to arrest them for murdering the 0 level stable guy, right? And that became a whole another chunk of the adventure, because now they were getting arrested and now there was wanted posters and they were like, why are all these guys trying to kill us? And I'm like, because you killed the thing. You didn't think you were going to murder somebody and get away with it, did you? But I'm 8th level, so that's what you want to avoid, okay? What did I do wrong? I don't know. But there was something that I did that made that NPC annoying enough that he had to die. Or maybe the player was just pissed at me or at having a bad day. I don't know. But that's what you want to avoid. Town is important. You want them to invest in town because town's where they go and rest and recuperate and get gear and get their quests. But you don't want them to spend so much time in town that it becomes the center of adventure. So you want town to be interesting, but not so interesting that they never leave. You want town to be interactive, but forgettable. You want them to fall in love with the characters and then completely forget about them in the next scene. For this episode of the show, Orange Cavendish is interesting, but once the show is over, once that session is over, he needs to be forgettable, so that when you move on to the next episode, the next game, they're already looking forward to getting out of town or to interacting with the next person in town. And what does that person want? What does that person need? What is that one thing that makes that person stand out? What is it about that NPC that's going to make the player characters click with them, but then forget him? So hopefully I've imparted a little bit of wisdom. Hopefully you can take something from this. Let's just to reaccount. What does my NPC want? What is my NPC afraid of? What is the one thing that makes my NPC stand out? What can I do to make my NPC forgettable once they're done, dealing with him? How do I get my player characters to interact with town, but not want to spend all their time in town? Town should be interesting, but boring. Unless, of course, you're running a game that's all about town. But, most campaigns aren't city-based. Most campaigns use the philosophy that city is safe, nothing interesting happens in city. You want them to leave city as quickly as possible to get out to where the good stuff is. And that's the other thing you want to keep reinforcing, that it's in their best interest to go and kill the monsters rather than killing the NPCs. Well, that's about it. I wasted your time for 20 minutes and it is hot. If you agree with this nonsense, let me know. If you think I'm just blowing smoke and I don't know what I'm talking about, let me know. Now we will inevitably await the video from our stalkers, Shoner and Birdbrain, and drive by to see how they will spin this in their usual sense. So I'm the OGGM. Take a moment to like, share, subscribe, check out my merch, link down below, and remember, You can love your NPCs, just don't love your NPCs, right?